We as the Muslim Ummah today, where we've gone wrong is we've started looking at other people's faults more than what is right and important for ourselves. Rather than trying to understand and learn what is fard for you. You know what really makes me tick is, you know, when someone says, you know what, in today's day and time you don't need to know how to do wudu properly, bro. You know, there's no need for you to spend so much time learning, perfecting your tajweed or learning the Quran. It's about what's going on in so-and-so area and what so-and-so people are doing, and that group of Muslims are doing that and they're not doing that, and they do this all the time and they don't do that much enough. I'm going to ask you, you know what so-and-so does and are you going to get questioned about that in your grave? Are the angels going to ask you, what's this area called? This area in Leeds, what's it called? Muhammad, the area that we're in, Mawjood, here present.
Headingley.
Huh?
Headingley.
Headingley? Look at Abdurrahman looking at you, where are you? Headingley?
What is it? What is it?
What is it?
LS1, isn't it?
Yeah.
LS2.
What is it?
Same. Woodhouse.
Okay, we're in Woodhouse. It's not Headingley, bro. We're in Woodhouse, yeah? What's the area next to us called?
Which way?
Behind you, bro. That area there, what's the area called?
Burley.
Burley and Woodhouse. Burley and Woodhouse. So, you're living where? For example, say you're living in Woodhouse. Sahih? In your local community, just for example, you know, ala billah, we ask Allah to save us from this, for His refuge in this. But say your street has got 5 drug dealers, you'd be lucky. Bentleys everywhere, bro. You've got 5 drug dealers in your street, yeah? And you've got people who work in the oldest profession in the sides of the streets. Sahih? There's fear of your house being robbed. There's fear of yourself, your brothers and sisters, your mothers and your sisters walking on the street, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. There's fear that they may get stabbed. So many worries and problems. Sahih? Instead of worrying about that, are you going to start worrying about Burley or Burnley? What do you call Burley?
Burley.
Are you going to start worrying about that? I'll be the first one to turn around and say to you, bro, what are you doing? You need a slap. Look at your street, what's going on there. Sah, you need to clean up your area before you start worrying about what they're doing. Why? Because that's something that concerns you directly. That's about you. But what I'm going to say now is even more than a reality than this. You know, when you get lowered in your grave, you are not going to get asked about what so-and-so used to do, what so-and-so did, what so-and-so did. You will get questioned about how you treated the people in your community. That is a concern. You need to worry about what other Muslims are doing. But before that, what are you going to get questioned about? Your own personal worship. Your own belief. How much time did you spend trying to perfect your own salah and your wudu and your recitation of the Quran? And is this beneficial or not today? I say it's even more beneficial and even more important than it was then. Why? Because people don't understand the importance of learning just wudu. They think it's just a physical thing that you learn. Sahih? You wash your hands and then your nose and your face and you gargle your mouth and so, that's it, you've learnt it. Why are we not aware of what Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, what he said? And he was washing his arms and he was washing them till here, rubbing them. So, Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib karamallahu wajhul karim comes and he says in the meaning of what he says, Abu Hurairah, what are you doing? The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to wash his hands till here. Why are you scrubbing them till here? And Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu said, I heard the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say that individual who washes their hands in wudu and scrubs them well, wherever the water reaches till, on the day of Qiyamah, that part of the limb will be shining and hellfire will be haram for that part of the limb. Hellfire becomes haram for that limb. Why? Because you washed it for the sake of Allah. And then every drop that falls of water, it's not just physical water falling. What's the spiritual benefit there? Sins are falling. Sahih? And once you've completed your wudu, to be in that state, to be in that state, if you are to die in that state, then inshallah you die as a shaheed, as a martyr. We're not talking about shaheed haqiqi here, shaheed hukmi. The different categories of shaheed. And then if you spend, and what has the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the hadith which can be found in the Sahihatain and the meaning of the hadith, if you spent all your life just learning one mas'ala about the deen, one mas'ala, and trying to perfect that mas'ala, and death overcame you, then you will be counted amongst the students of sacred knowledge for whom the doors of heaven are open. But all you did was what? Spend your time learning one mas'ala in the deen, one rule and regulation of the deen. And why did you just spend time learning that? Because as soon as you learnt it, you'd forget it. So you'd learn it again. Oh, and then you forget. I don't know, your memory must be like a fish. You learn it and you forget it. You learn it and you forget. You learn it and you forget. So you just kept learning and learning. And just through that act, Allah became pleased with you. That look at my slave. Look at to get close to me, they're willing to go into nitty-gritty little things about how would Allah feel about this? How would Allah feel about that? How would Allah feel? How would Allah feel? How did the Prophet ﷺ do it? How did he do it? How did he do it? But today, you know what we've become? We Muslims, we've become these people where, okay, you know, you're teaching people about wudu all day and about praying salah and so on so, but we've got more important things to worry about. What? You know the group of brothers who sit there, right? They're deviant. They're deviant. And you know the sisters over there, those are Ahlul Bid'ah. And you know the brothers, they're mushriks. And you know those up there, you can't pray salah behind them. Oh, no, don't pray salah behind them. Subhanallah. You know the work of the scholars, the layman has taken on. The work of the scholars, the layman has taken on. You know what? I'm going to start operating on every single person of my family with a knife in the kitchen. No need for doctors. If someone falls ill, if my wife falls ill, Allah nakare, you know, really hope Allah doesn't make it happen. If she falls ill, just chop her up and take out the illness. No need to go to the doctors. Why? What? I know where the illness is. I know, I've read about it on Google, alright? I've got a book. I've been to Waterstone. Ayyuhal khullan. Why did the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, the ulama warathatul anbiya, the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets, and they've not inherited dinar and dirham. In today's terminology, you know, pounds and dollars. That's not a scholar, but a person who inherits the knowledge of the prophets. They spend years and years studying the deen. Sahih? We attend, say for 2 full years, lectures, and then we become scholars. And then we start refuting, rebuking them. We've spent 12 or 13 years of their life in ribats, madrasas, whatever you want to call them, at the feet of ulama, of scholars, learning the deen, but we know better than them today. Why? Because we read it in a book somewhere. This is not gaining knowledge. This is not feeding the intellect that Allah has given you. Rather, this is feeding the nafs within you. This is feeding that nafs about which Allah has warned you. Allah has given us clear warnings that the nafs is split into 2. Nafs ammara wal lawama. And then we have nafs al-mutma'inna. And if you start feeding that nafs, where you gain knowledge, where you think you gain knowledge, instead of making it beneficial knowledge for yourself by applying it in your own life, you think, you know what, I know this and I'm better than them. And you know what, I'm going to impart this knowledge to people, but without wisdom. Without going by the ruling of the Quran. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَمَوْعِظَةٌ لِلْحَسَنَةِ. The best caller are those who call towards Allah with the most beautifulest of speech, with beautiful sayings, with wisdom, with love and harmony. This is how people come towards the deen. But no, what I'm going to do, and I'm going to say, you're like this, and you're like that, and I know this, and you don't know that. Can you imagine the Prophet of Allah sallallahu standing in front of the Sahabas, rebuking them to the extent where they felt shameful to be human, let alone Muslim? No, rather the Prophet of Allah sallallahu even when someone was doing something completely against the Sharia in front of him, remember the incident, and we all read about this and hear this all the time, but do we understand it? Does this knowledge sit in our mind? When that companion of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu comes into Masjid al-Nabawi Sharif, goes into the corner of the masjid and starts relieving himself. The Sahabas are pushing one another out the way. We're going to do something to him today. They want to grab him hard and The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stops them. They stop. Let him finish what he's doing. Let him finish. And then the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself goes and he holds him and he gives him peace. Assalamu alaikum. How are you, my brother? You know, this is a sacred place. This is the house of Allah. We worship Allah here. You're not supposed to do this here. Oh, aren't I supposed to do this? Here. I couldn't find anywhere else. Well, there's a designated place, and the reason you don't do it here, because we worship here, and where there's worship, we try to keep it clean, and cleanliness is important, and so on and so forth and so on. Explain to him with wisdom, where he himself became, that Sahabi became one of the biggest da'is, callers towards Allah. Why? Because he learned the deen from someone who's teaching it with wisdom, and he only learnt it to better himself. He only learnt it to better himself. So if you want to learn the deen, understand that first and foremost, the deen needs to be learnt to better yourself as an individual. The deen needs to be learnt to humble yourself before Allah. The deen needs to be learnt, and it's not a choice. Don't think you have a choice in learning the deen. You, on the day of Qiyamah, without going into the subject, and inshallah, next Tuesday, inshallah, we'll talk about this topic more openly. But just one thing for you and me to think about, let me remind myself and remind you that, when the day of Qiyamah comes, and you stand in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's going to be the questioning that takes place. Can we seriously picture ourselves in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Does that thought even enter our minds that you're in the presence of Allah and your Lord is questioning you? And Allah says to you, through His divine command, enter hellfire. And say, Ya Rab, me enter hellfire? I prayed salah 5 times a day. I fasted in the month of Ramadan. I gave zakah and I did my hajj. Sir, I did. What is the reason? And the reason is given that you did not partake in learning the deen. The acts of worship that you done was a mere imitation. You only imitated other people. Is that a long day, bro? Listening to, instead of learning the deen, what did you do? You looked at other people and they do it like this. Chalo, let's copy them. Sir, just imitate it. Just imitate it without having an understanding, without appreciating what you're actually doing. Why do you lift your hands when you say Allahu Akbar? Why do you recite Surah Fatiha? Where do you draw the line in learning the deen? Nowhere. From the cradle of your mother's lap till the cradle of the grave. Keep learning. And the more you learn, wallah, you will realize that in reality I know nothing. Because there's so much to learn, subhanallah. There's so much. I've got, purely out of the love, a lot of brothers who call me their teacher. Astaghfirullah, Allah forgive me. I don't even know how to spell the word teacher. Is it with a T or a E? Because, the more you learn, and I've not even started learning the deen. I've not even, Allah forgive me, Allah forgive me. I've not spent time learning the deen or nothing. But when I see brothers and sisters who are so scrupulous in getting that university degree, it's so important. You're going to get a job with the UN. Sit next to Kofi Annan. Yes, you are. But how about sitting next to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Jannah? How about sitting next to Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu in Jannah? My mothers and sisters, how about spending time in the company of Sayyidah Fatima Zahra in Jannah and Sayyidah Aisha Siddiqa in Jannah? Why not learn about their ways? Why not be so scrupulous in learning that? Have a clear balance. Balance it out. Learn the way of this temporary world that you're living in. Very important. Appreciate the aql, the knowledge and the intellect Allah has given you. Utilize it in an important way. Do your degrees, do your masters and your PhDs, but don't neglect your deen. Don't neglect your deen. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المؤمنين إنه هو الغفور الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.